Section 1. It's the end of your workday. You've just wrapped up a meeting and are about to head out, feeling like you've made a good impression. Your phone buzzes, an email from your supervisor. The subject line reads, "Feedback on your report." Your heart skips a beat. Instantly, your body tenses. You've been here before, the cold sweat, the racing thoughts, the sudden pit in your stomach. You try to keep calm, but your mind is already spiraling. What does this mean? Did I miss something important? You open the email cautiously. The first few lines mention the parts of your report that were good, but then come the critiques. Your supervisor points out several areas where you need improvement. It's not harsh, but that doesn't matter. The moment you see those critical words, the room feels smaller. You feel yourself shrinking, as though the judgment is not just about your work but about you as a person. What if this means I'm not good enough? What if they think I'm failing? Before you even finish reading the email, your mind is in turmoil. You begin overthinking, replaying the conversation you had in the meeting, questioning everything. What does this mean for my job? What if my career is on the line? You want to respond immediately, defend yourself, explain why things went the way they did, but you know deep down that this isn't the best reaction. Instead of processing the feedback, you're caught up in a swirl of emotions. Anger, doubt, self-criticism. It's exhausting, and you can feel it draining your energy. This scenario is all too familiar, isn't it? Whether it's feedback from a boss, a partner, or even a close friend, criticism often triggers the same emotional response. In an instant, you feel threatened, as if your self-worth is directly tied to someone else's opinion. It's natural to react this way, but that reaction doesn't serve you. It keeps you from growing, from improving, and from using the feedback to your advantage. What if you could break free from this automatic response? What if you didn't have to feel threatened by criticism anymore? What if there was a way to handle feedback calmly, without it disrupting your peace of mind? Criticism is inevitable. It happens to everyone at some point, whether it's at work, in relationships, or even in casual conversations. The problem is not the criticism itself, it's how we respond to it. In that moment when someone points out something we could do better, we tend to go one of two ways. We either shut down completely, withdrawing into ourselves, or we go on the defensive, scrambling to explain why we did things the way we did. Both reactions are driven by emotions that, while natural, don't serve us in the long run. When you react defensively or withdraw, you miss out on valuable opportunities for growth. At work, this could mean you stop accepting feedback, thinking that it's an attack on your abilities. In relationships, it might look like avoiding difficult conversations or getting angry when someone points out something that needs improvement. The stakes are high. If you never learn to handle criticism constructively, it will hold you back from achieving your full potential. You'll avoid learning, shy away from difficult conversations, and continue to be bogged down by unnecessary emotions. The costs aren't just emotional. They're also practical. When you react defensively or withdraw, you waste time and energy. You're mentally stuck in a loop of overthinking and self-doubt. Instead of focusing on how to improve, you're focused on protecting yourself from feeling judged. The longer this goes on, the more it erodes your confidence and your ability to handle future feedback. Here's the good news: it doesn't have to be this way. By the end of this lesson, I will show you how to respond to criticism with emotional control. You'll be able to separate your sense of self-worth from others' opinions, so that feedback becomes something that helps you grow instead of something that knocks you down. After watching this lesson, you'll be able to take criticism without it feeling like a personal attack on who you are, respond thoughtfully and calmly, rather than emotionally or defensively, walk away from difficult conversations feeling empowered, not defeated. Educational content inspired by classical Stoic texts. Not medical, psychological, financial, or legal advice. If you want steady Stoic focus lessons on emotional control, boundaries, and relationships every week, this is the channel for you. Stay with me until the very end, and while you're here, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. First, we're going to explore why criticism triggers such strong emotions. It's not just about what's said, it's about how we interpret those words and the automatic emotional responses we have. Next, we'll break down the core principle of emotional control and why it's not about suppressing your feelings, but about responding to criticism in a calm, measured way. Then, I'll introduce you to a simple microscript you can use to keep your reactions in check the next time someone gives you feedback. After that, we'll dive into a slow practice moment where you'll learn how to embody this approach in real time. Finally, we'll wrap things up with a real-world example, showing you how to apply everything you've learned to a tough situation at work or home. In just a few moments, we'll walk through a specific example, a conversation where using these tools prevents you from getting defensive and helps you stay grounded. This real-world scenario will give you clarity on how to handle difficult conversations without letting your emotions take over. Section 2. Criticism isn't the problem, it's how we react to it. The emotional reaction we experience often clouds our ability to respond thoughtfully and productively. If you've ever been in a situation where you felt like the criticism was an attack on your character rather than an opportunity for growth, you know how paralyzing that can be. Instead of using feedback to improve, we often get stuck in a defensive or withdrawn state, unable to process the information effectively. The stakes are high at this moment. If you don't learn how to control your reactions to criticism, you risk spiraling emotionally, which takes up valuable time and mental energy. It also impacts your relationships, whether personal or professional. When you don't manage your emotions, you create a barrier to meaningful connection and growth. It's a vicious cycle. Feedback comes in, your defense mechanisms trigger, and you miss the chance to learn and evolve. The simple truth is that every moment of criticism is an opportunity. The way you react to feedback is what ultimately determines whether it helps or hurts you. If you continue to react defensively or withdraw, you'll keep missing those opportunities, and you'll continue to let your emotions drive your responses. But if you learn to respond with calm and clarity, criticism can become a stepping stone to greater self-awareness, improved performance, and deeper relationships. The reason we react so strongly to criticism is tied to how we view our identity. When someone critiques our work or behavior, it feels like they're critiquing who we are. We internalize their feedback as a reflection of our worth. This is an automatic response that happens in the brain, and it's deeply rooted in our need for validation and belonging. However, this automatic response doesn't serve us in the long run. It creates unnecessary emotional distress that blocks us from learning and improving. Instead, emotional control works by allowing us to separate our sense of self-worth from the feedback we receive. When you learn to create a psychological distance between your identity and the feedback, you can process it more objectively. You don't need to take it personally. You can listen to the feedback, acknowledge it, and decide how to use it to your advantage without allowing it to dictate your emotional state. This approach works because it shifts the focus from external validation to internal growth. Rather than being reactive to what someone says about you, you shift your mindset to how you can use their words to improve yourself. By learning to take criticism without it affecting your self-worth, you open yourself up to opportunities for growth and development. This creates a healthier, more productive relationship with feedback. In those moments of feedback, having a script to fall back on can be a game changer. It helps you respond with thoughtfulness instead of reacting emotionally. Here's a simple microscript you can use the next time you're faced with criticism. I appreciate the feedback. Let me take some time to process it, and I'll get back to you with my thoughts. This line does a few things. First, it shows that you're open to feedback and willing to consider it. Second, it gives you space to process the information, rather than reacting impulsively. Finally, it keeps the conversation productive by creating a constructive follow-up moment. Let's take a moment and put this into a real-world context. Imagine you're at work, and you've just presented a project you've been working on for weeks. Your boss begins offering feedback, pointing out areas where the project could be improved. She mentions a few points where your analysis was lacking and suggests some changes. You might have immediately felt defensive. Maybe you'd start to argue, pointing out all the hard work you'd put in, or perhaps you'd start to shut down, feeling defeated. But today, with your new approach, you remember the microscript. You take a deep breath and respond, I appreciate the feedback. Let me take some time to process it, and I'll get back to you with my thoughts. In this moment, instead of spiraling into a defensive or withdrawn state, you create a pause. You allow yourself time to reflect on the feedback, knowing it's not a reflection of your worth, but an opportunity to grow. This allows you to maintain your composure and stay focused on improving the project, not on defending yourself. Now, let's take a look at what would have happened if you hadn't used the microscript. You could have gone into a defensive argument, escalating the tension. Or you might have internalized the critique too deeply, allowing it to affect your confidence. By responding with emotional control, you not only diffuse the situation, but you also set yourself up to improve and strengthen the project, all while maintaining your sense of self-worth. One of the key strategies for emotional control is taking intentional action. Today, try setting a feedback window for yourself. If someone gives you feedback, instead of reacting immediately, take 15 to 30 minutes to sit with it. Reflect on it, breathe, and allow yourself to process the information before responding. This simple action helps prevent emotional reactions from taking over and gives you time to think more clearly about how to use the feedback to your advantage. In practice, you could set a timer for 30 minutes and use that time to calm your emotions. If you're at work, step away from your desk for a few minutes, take a walk, or even grab a coffee. This helps you reset emotionally and come back to the conversation with a clearer mindset. Now, let's take a moment to practice emotional control. Pause for a moment and bring to mind a situation where you've received feedback recently. Maybe it was from your boss, a friend, or a partner. Take a deep breath. As you inhale, feel your body relax. As you exhale, let go of any tension you might be holding onto. Now, think about how you could have responded differently, how you could have used the microscript to stay grounded and calm. Imagine yourself in that moment, using the words, "I appreciate the feedback. Let me take some time to process it, and I'll get back to you with my thoughts." Feel how different the situation could have been if you'd responded with emotional control. Take another deep breath and carry that feeling with you. In the next section, we'll take a deeper dive into how to make this approach a habit so that handling criticism becomes second nature to you. But for now, hold on to this microscript because it's a powerful tool that will serve you in moments of feedback, pressure, and emotional overwhelm. Section 3. Receiving feedback is an inevitable part of life, whether in the workplace, in relationships, or in personal growth. But how you respond to that feedback can make all the difference. We often hear the phrase, "feedback is a gift," but in the heat of the moment, it can feel more like an attack. It's easy to take feedback personally, to feel like your entire worth is on the line. The truth is, we all have emotional reactions to feedback, especially when it challenges our efforts or calls attention to our weaknesses. However, how you handle those reactions can either elevate you or hold you back. The stakes are high. If you don't learn how to manage your emotional responses to feedback, you risk staying stuck in a defensive mindset that prevents you from growing. In the workplace, this could mean you avoid crucial conversations, miss out on improvement opportunities, or lose the respect of your colleagues. In relationships, it could lead to miscommunication, resentment, or conflict. Emotionally, constantly reacting to feedback can erode your confidence, increase stress, and make you feel helpless. The longer you let feedback trigger your emotions, the more time and energy you waste, and the less progress you make. The foundation of emotional control is rooted in the understanding that criticism isn't a reflection of your identity, it's about the action, behavior, or situation being addressed. When you internalize feedback as a reflection of who you are, your emotional defenses immediately go up. You feel hurt, defensive, or rejected, and your brain starts to create stories about why you're unworthy or inadequate. But the reality is, feedback is about learning, growing, and improving, not about judging your entire existence. When you can separate yourself from the feedback, it gives you the space to objectively analyze what's being said. Emotional control works because it allows you to respond rather than react. By creating a psychological distance between the feedback and your sense of self-worth, you can see criticism for what it truly is, an opportunity to improve. This isn't always easy, but it's a skill that can be developed over time. One of the main reasons this works is that it shifts the focus from defending yourself to improving yourself. When you stop viewing criticism as an attack and start seeing it as a tool for growth, your mindset changes. Instead of feeling defeated, you feel empowered. You feel capable of learning from mistakes, making adjustments, and becoming better. And this mindset isn't just about handling criticism, it's about cultivating resilience, openness, and emotional strength that will serve you in every area of your life. Having a tool, like a microscript, can make all the difference in how you respond to criticism. A simple, clear line gives you the power to pause and refocus in the moment. Here's a line you can use the next time you face criticism. Thank you for the feedback. I'll take time to reflect on it and get back to you. This line works on multiple levels. First, it shows appreciation for the feedback, which helps soften the conversation and builds rapport. Second, it gives you the space to pause and process the information, so you're not reacting impulsively. Finally, it communicates that you're willing to consider the feedback seriously and will address it thoughtfully, which reflects emotional maturity and professionalism. Let's put this into a real-life situation. Imagine you've been working on a project for weeks, pouring hours into making sure every detail is perfect. Finally, you present it to your team, proud of what you've accomplished. But then your colleague, who you respect, points out several flaws in your presentation. Maybe the design isn't cohesive, or the data isn't as clear as it could be. In the past, this feedback would have stung. You might have felt like your hard work was invalidated or even questioned your ability to do your job. But today, with your new tools in place, you respond differently. Instead of feeling defensive or hurt, you remember your microscript. You take a deep breath and calmly say, "Thank you for the feedback. I'll take time to reflect on it and get back to you." In that moment, you create a pause, a space between the feedback and your reaction. This pause allows you to process the criticism without internalizing it. You're able to listen objectively, instead of emotionally. The next day, after reflecting on the feedback, you incorporate the suggested changes and come back with a refined version of the project. You even thank your colleague for helping you improve your work. By responding with emotional control, you turn what could have been a painful experience into an opportunity for growth. Instead of feeling defeated, you feel empowered by the feedback. You've learned something valuable, and you've become better at what you do. A key component of emotional control is taking proactive steps to manage your responses before, during, and after receiving feedback. One simple action you can take today is to set a response time when you're given criticism. Instead of responding immediately, give yourself a set period, whether it's 5 minutes, an hour, or a day, to process the feedback and reflect on it before replying. For instance, after receiving feedback, you can say, "I need a little time to think about this. I'll get back to you tomorrow." This gives you time to calm down, avoid a knee-jerk emotional reaction, and approach the feedback with clarity and a problem-solving mindset. This small action helps you maintain control of your emotions and keeps the conversation productive and focused on growth. Now, let's pause for a moment and practice what we've just discussed. Think back to a situation when you've received feedback recently, perhaps at work, in a relationship, or in a personal project. Bring that moment to your mind. Now, close your eyes and take a slow, deep breath. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and exhale for 4 seconds. As you breathe, let go of any tension or defensiveness you may be holding onto. Let your body relax and clear your mind. Now, imagine yourself in that moment, hearing the feedback again. This time, instead of reacting with emotion, you calmly use the microscript, "Thank you for the feedback. I'll take time to reflect on it and get back to you." Visualize yourself responding with calm and clarity, feeling empowered and open to improvement. Take another deep breath and repeat, "I am in control of how I respond to feedback." Let that thought settle in your body, reinforcing your ability to stay calm in the face of criticism. In the next section, we'll explore how to strengthen these emotional control strategies so that they become second nature. You'll learn how to apply this approach consistently, making emotional control a regular part of your life, no matter the situation. Section 4. When you face criticism, it often feels like an attack on your worth. It's difficult to separate your sense of self from the feedback you're receiving. That immediate emotional surge, whether it's anger, shame, or anxiety, feels real, and it's hard to ignore. But here's the thing, this emotional reaction isn't necessary, and it's actually getting in the way of your growth. If you want to improve and strengthen your emotional resilience, you have to learn how to respond to criticism calmly and thoughtfully. The stakes are high because if you continue to react emotionally to criticism, you'll miss out on valuable opportunities for improvement. You might spend more time defending yourself than reflecting on how you can grow. In relationships, this constant defensive posture can create tension and distance, as you may come across as dismissive or overly sensitive. At work, defensiveness might cause colleagues or supervisors to hesitate before giving you feedback in the future, which can hurt your performance. If you want to thrive, emotionally reacting to criticism is a barrier you need to break through. Why does emotional control work when it comes to criticism? The answer lies in how we process emotions and how feedback impacts our sense of self. Feedback, whether positive or negative, often feels like a direct reflection of our worth. In reality, feedback is a tool for growth, not a judgment of your value. But when we view it through the lens of self-worth, we react emotionally. We either withdraw into ourselves, feeling hurt, or we lash out defensively, trying to protect ourselves from the perceived attack. Emotional control works by creating distance between your identity and the feedback you receive. Instead of reacting in a knee-jerk manner, you're able to pause, take a step back, and evaluate the feedback objectively. This shift allows you to separate your sense of self from the critique, making it easier to see it for what it truly is, an opportunity to improve. This process is rooted in the Stoic principle of distinguishing between what we can control and what we can't. You can't control the feedback you receive, but you can control how you respond to it. By choosing to respond with thoughtfulness instead of emotional reactivity, you gain the power to use the feedback in a way that enhances your growth. This works because it shifts the focus from protecting your ego to improving yourself. When you let go of the emotional weight of feedback, you are free to make use of it without getting bogged down by negative emotions. When faced with criticism, it's easy to react emotionally, but having a go-to script can help you stay grounded. Here's an effective line you can use to create space between the feedback and your emotional response. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I'll take some time to reflect on it and follow up with you. This line does several things. First, it shows that you're open to receiving the feedback, which can diffuse any tension in the conversation. Second, it gives you the time you need to process the feedback and respond thoughtfully. Lastly, it signals that you're not rejecting the feedback but are genuinely considering it as part of your growth process. Using this script in the heat of the moment allows you to stay grounded and focused. It prevents you from reacting impulsively and allows you to respond in a way that demonstrates emotional maturity and self-awareness. Let's consider an example from a workplace scenario. Imagine you're in a performance review with your boss. You've worked hard on a recent project, but your boss points out several areas where the work didn't meet expectations. Instead of getting defensive or shutting down, you remember your microscript. You take a deep breath and respond, "Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I'll take some time to reflect on it and follow up with you." By using this line, you've avoided the trap of defensiveness. You've also created space for yourself to process the feedback without getting caught up in emotional reactions. This pause allows you to go home, reflect on what was said, and think about how you can improve for the future. When you follow up with your boss, you're not only demonstrating emotional control, but also showing that you take their feedback seriously and are committed to growing. This is a powerful shift from how most people react when criticized. Instead of fighting or withdrawing, you create an opportunity for yourself to grow. You turn the feedback into a catalyst for improvement rather than an emotional burden. One of the most important aspects of emotional control is having a small, actionable step that you can implement immediately. The next time you receive feedback, try implementing a pause and process technique. This could be as simple as setting a timer for 5 minutes after receiving the feedback, where you don't respond at all. During this time, take a deep breath, reflect on the feedback, and ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I use this to improve? After the 5 minutes, come back to the conversation with a clear mind and a more thoughtful response. If you're feeling particularly emotional, give yourself more time to process. This small action gives you control over your emotional reactions, preventing you from making snap decisions that you might later regret. By using this technique, you begin to make emotional control a habit, and soon it becomes second nature. Instead of reacting defensively or withdrawing, you'll start responding with thoughtfulness and clarity. This simple action allows you to regain control of your emotional state, making feedback a more productive and less stressful experience. Let's take a moment to practice what we've just discussed. Close your eyes and take a deep breath. Inhale slowly for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and exhale slowly for 4 seconds. As you breathe, allow yourself to let go of any tension or stress you may be holding onto. Now, bring to mind a recent situation where you received feedback. Maybe it was a conversation at work, with a friend, or in a personal project. Picture that moment clearly in your mind. As you think about it, imagine yourself in that situation using the microscript. "Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I'll take some time to reflect on it and follow up with you." Feel how the situation changes when you respond calmly instead of emotionally. Notice the sense of empowerment you feel when you're able to process the feedback thoughtfully. Take another deep breath and let that sense of control sink into your body. In the next section, we'll explore how to integrate emotional control into every aspect of your life, making it easier to stay grounded and composed no matter what feedback you face. We'll dive into strategies for making emotional control an ongoing part of your mindset. Section 5. Criticism often feels like an instant judgment of who we are as people. When we receive feedback, especially if it's about something we've worked hard on, it's tempting to take it personally. Our brains are wired to protect us from perceived threats, and in the moment of feedback, our instinct is to either defend ourselves or withdraw. However, these reactions are automatic and counterproductive. What if instead of letting criticism knock you off balance, you could see it as a moment to enhance your growth and self-awareness? The stakes of not controlling your emotional responses to criticism are high. If you continue to let feedback derail your focus, you will keep wasting time and energy fighting against your own emotional reactions. This not only affects your work but can also strain relationships, whether professional or personal. When you react emotionally to criticism, you might unintentionally close off opportunities to learn or improve. Instead of feeling empowered by feedback, you end up feeling victimized by it. This cycle of defensiveness or withdrawal keeps you stuck, rather than propelling you forward into growth. But imagine this, a conversation where you can take criticism in stride, without it shaking your sense of self. What would it feel like to take a pause, process the feedback, and then respond in a calm and reflective manner? This is what emotional control can offer you, the ability to face criticism with resilience and clarity, without it affecting your peace of mind. At the core of emotional control in response to criticism is the ability to step back from your emotional instincts and view the situation objectively. Our reactions to criticism are deeply tied to our self-esteem and the need to protect ourselves from feeling inadequate. However, the true purpose of criticism is not to attack you, but to help you grow. When you react with defensiveness, you lose the opportunity to improve and learn from the feedback. Emotional control works because it empowers you to take charge of your reactions instead of letting your emotions dictate your behavior. Instead of getting stuck in a spiral of self-doubt or anger, you learn to pause, reflect, and choose your response. This ability to detach from the feedback allows you to view it more objectively, which in turn makes it easier to integrate the valuable lessons it offers. A key part of this process is understanding that your worth is not tied to your work or the feedback you receive. This is a central idea in Stoic philosophy, which teaches us that our value is not determined by external factors, such as what others think of us. When you separate your sense of self from the feedback, you're able to maintain your inner calm, regardless of the criticism you encounter. This emotional control doesn't suppress your feelings, it allows you to feel them without letting them control your actions. In the heat of the moment, having a go-to phrase can help you stay grounded. Here's a simple line to use when you're facing criticism. "I understand your point. Let me think about it and come back to you with my thoughts." This line works because it accomplishes several things. First, it shows that you are open to receiving the feedback without immediately rejecting it. Second, it gives you the time you need to process the information and avoid a knee-jerk reaction. Third, it communicates that you are taking the feedback seriously, while also asserting that you need a moment to reflect on it. This approach shifts the focus from defending yourself to learning from the feedback, making the conversation more productive. Let's apply this approach to a real-world situation. Imagine you've been working on a big presentation at work, and you've spent days putting it together. When the time comes to present it, your boss points out several areas that need improvement. She mentions that the data is unclear in a few places and suggests that you restructure certain sections for better clarity. In the past, you might have become defensive. You might have explained why you did things the way you did, or you might have felt a sense of rejection. But this time, you remember your microscript. You take a deep breath, respond calmly, and say, "I understand your point. Let me think about it and come back to you with my thoughts." By responding this way, you've created the space you need to process the feedback without emotional turmoil. Instead of rushing into a defensive argument, you've taken the time to listen and reflect. The next day, you return with a revised version of the presentation that addresses the feedback and makes the presentation even stronger. The outcome is clear. Instead of reacting emotionally, you use the feedback as an opportunity to improve. This is the power of emotional control in action. You didn't let the criticism derail you. You took it, processed it, and used it to make your work better. Not only did you enhance the quality of your presentation, but you also demonstrated emotional maturity and a willingness to learn. One simple, measurable action you can take today is to implement a pause and reflect rule for yourself. The next time you receive feedback, whether in a meeting, a casual conversation, or even in a personal relationship, pause for at least 10 seconds before responding. During this pause, take a deep breath and reflect on the feedback objectively. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I use this feedback to improve? This brief moment of reflection allows you to create the space necessary to respond thoughtfully rather than reacting emotionally. By practicing this simple action, you train yourself to respond with calmness and clarity rather than defensiveness or withdrawal. Let's take a moment to practice emotional control. Close your eyes and take a deep breath in, holding it for a count of 4. Now exhale slowly for a count of 4. As you breathe, allow your body to relax and release any tension you may be holding onto. Now, think about a recent situation where you received feedback. It could have been at work, with a colleague, or even in your personal life. As you recall the situation, notice how you felt in that moment. Did you immediately react emotionally? Did you feel defensive or hurt? Now, imagine yourself responding differently. Picture yourself using the microscript, "I understand your point. Let me think about it and come back to you with my thoughts." Visualize yourself pausing, reflecting, and choosing a thoughtful response rather than reacting immediately. Feel the difference in your body when you take control of your emotional state. Take a few more deep breaths and repeat the following phrase silently to yourself, "I am in control of how I respond to feedback." Feel the sense of empowerment that comes with knowing you can choose your response. This is emotional control in action. In the next section, we'll explore how to build these emotional control practices into your everyday life. You'll learn how to make them a natural part of your routine so that you can respond thoughtfully to feedback in any situation. Section 6. Criticism can feel like an emotional roller coaster. One moment, you feel confident, and the next, you're knocked off balance by feedback that triggers doubt or frustration. The instinct to react, whether it's shutting down or getting defensive, can be overwhelming. But here's the truth, these emotional responses don't serve you. In fact, they often prevent you from making the most of the feedback you receive, and they can create unnecessary tension in your relationships. So, how can you stop this cycle and use criticism as a tool for growth rather than a source of stress? The stakes are high because, if you continue to react emotionally to criticism, you risk losing the opportunity to grow. You might avoid tough conversations, ignore valuable feedback, or stay stuck in a defensive mindset. These habits can damage your work, your relationships, and even your self-esteem. On the other hand, if you learn to manage your emotions, criticism can become one of the most powerful tools for your development. By practicing emotional control, you create the space to absorb feedback with an open mind, process it effectively, and use it to fuel your growth. Emotional control works because it helps you detach from your immediate emotional reactions and respond in a more thoughtful and constructive way. The first step in controlling your emotional response to criticism is recognizing that your self-worth is not dependent on the feedback you receive. Too often, we link our identity with our work or performance, so when someone critiques our efforts, it feels like a critique of who we are. But this connection is false. The feedback is about the work or behavior, not about you as a person. When you can create that mental separation, you stop taking criticism personally. This allows you to view feedback as an opportunity for self-improvement, rather than an emotional attack. Instead of feeling defensive, you feel empowered to take the feedback, reflect on it, and use it to make changes where necessary. By doing this, you're able to stay emotionally grounded in the face of criticism, which in turn allows you to stay focused and productive. Emotional control doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or pretending everything is fine when it's not. It means acknowledging your emotions without letting them dictate your actions. It means giving yourself the time and space to process the feedback before reacting. This way, when you respond, it's with clarity and purpose, not out of frustration or fear. Having a reliable microscript in your back pocket is a game changer when it comes to emotional control. The next time you face criticism, you can use this line to create the space you need to process the feedback calmly. Thank you for the feedback. I'll take some time to reflect on it and get back to you. This simple line accomplishes several things. It shows that you appreciate the feedback, which helps diffuse any tension in the conversation. It also gives you the time you need to reflect, so you don't respond impulsively. Finally, it communicates that you're open to improving and willing to take action based on the feedback. This line gives you control over the situation and allows you to respond thoughtfully, rather than emotionally. Let's put this into a concrete example. Imagine you're at work, and you've just completed a project that you've been pouring your energy into for weeks. You're feeling good about it, and you're ready to present it to your team. But as soon as you start the presentation, your boss points out several flaws. She mentions that some of the data is unclear, and the overall structure could be more concise. Your first instinct might be to get defensive. You might feel embarrassed, angry, or frustrated. You could start explaining why you made those decisions or justify why certain elements were done a certain way. But instead, you take a deep breath and use your microscript. Thank you for the feedback. I'll take some time to reflect on it and get back to you. In that moment, you've chosen to take a step back instead of reacting impulsively. You've given yourself time to process the feedback without letting your emotions take control. The next day, you take the time to review the feedback carefully and make the necessary adjustments to your project. When you follow up with your boss, you've not only improved your work, but you've also demonstrated emotional maturity by responding thoughtfully rather than emotionally. By using this approach, you've turned what could have been a stressful situation into a constructive learning experience. Instead of feeling defeated by criticism, you've used it to improve your work and strengthen your relationship with your boss. Emotional control is not just about having the right mindset, it's also about taking small, actionable steps that help you process feedback effectively. One tiny action you can take today is to implement a feedback reflection rule. Whenever you receive feedback, give yourself a set amount of time, whether it's 5 minutes, 30 minutes, or a day, to reflect on the feedback before responding. For example, after a meeting where you've received criticism, say to yourself, I'll take 30 minutes to think about this and then get back to you. Use that time to detach from the emotions of the moment and focus on the practical elements of the feedback. What can you learn from it? How can you apply it to your work or behavior? This simple action prevents you from reacting in the heat of the moment, and it gives you time to process the feedback in a more thoughtful, constructive way. Over time, this small change can have a significant impact on your ability to respond to criticism with emotional control. Let's pause for a moment and practice emotional control together. Close your eyes and take a deep breath in, holding it for 4 seconds, then exhale slowly for 4 seconds. As you breathe, allow your body to relax and let go of any tension you might be holding onto. Now, bring to mind a situation where you received feedback recently. Maybe it was in a work setting, in a conversation with a friend, or during a personal project. Think about how you felt at that moment. Did you immediately react? Did you feel hurt, defensive, or frustrated? Now, imagine yourself in that same situation again. This time, you take a deep breath and use your microscript. Thank you for the feedback. I'll take some time to reflect on it and get back to you. Visualize yourself responding calmly and thoughtfully instead of reacting emotionally. Notice how different the situation feels when you choose emotional control. Take another deep breath and let that sense of calm and clarity sink into your body. Feel the difference between reacting impulsively and responding thoughtfully. In the next section, we'll build on this foundation of emotional control by exploring how to handle the most challenging conversations where criticism is more difficult to process. You'll learn how to stay centered and grounded, no matter how tough the feedback may seem. Section 7. Criticism often feels like a direct assault on your ego. When someone points out flaws or offers suggestions for improvement, it can trigger feelings of shame, defensiveness, or self-doubt. Our natural instinct is to protect ourselves from that emotional discomfort, and sometimes that leads us to either lash out or withdraw. But here's the challenge: the longer you let those emotions control you, the more you distance yourself from opportunities for growth. Instead of seeing feedback as a chance to improve, you may start to see it as a threat that undermines your self-worth. The stakes are high when you don't learn how to manage your emotions in these moments. If you continue to react impulsively to criticism, you'll keep losing valuable feedback. You'll miss out on chances to learn from others, which limits your growth. The more you avoid or deflect criticism, the less you improve and the more you stay stuck in patterns of self-doubt and insecurity. In professional settings, this can cost you your reputation and opportunities for advancement. In relationships, it can create distance and misunderstandings. To thrive, you need to stop letting feedback overwhelm you and start using it as a tool for self-improvement. Emotional control works because it shifts the focus from defending yourself to improving yourself. When you are able to separate your self-worth from the feedback you receive, you stop reacting emotionally and start responding with clarity. This emotional detachment allows you to listen to the feedback without taking it personally, and it frees you from the automatic impulse to justify or protect yourself. The process of emotional control begins with recognizing that feedback is not about you, it's about the situation, your actions, or your behavior. It's a tool for growth, not a judgment of who you are as a person. By accepting that criticism is about improving your performance, not diminishing your worth, you can approach feedback with a mindset of openness and curiosity. When you do this, you transform the feedback into a constructive process rather than an emotional battle. When you apply emotional control, you stop giving your emotions the power to dictate your actions. Instead of reacting out of fear or frustration, you make a conscious choice to listen, reflect, and decide how to use the feedback to improve. This allows you to engage with the feedback in a calm and measured way, making the entire process far more productive. Having a pre-prepared line to use in moments of criticism can make a huge difference in how you respond. The next time you receive feedback, here's a microscript you can use. Thanks for sharing that with me. Let me reflect on it and come back to you with my thoughts. This line does several things. First, it acknowledges the feedback and shows appreciation for the input, which helps prevent the conversation from feeling adversarial. Second, it gives you the time you need to process the feedback before responding. This pause allows you to clear your head and avoid reacting impulsively. Finally, it reinforces that you're open to the feedback and committed to learning from it. This microscript is simple, but powerful. It allows you to take control of the situation, set the tone for a constructive conversation, and ensure that you respond thoughtfully, not emotionally. Let's look at an example of how this works in real life. Imagine you're in a meeting at work, and you've just presented a proposal that you've spent a lot of time developing. You've put your best effort into it, but as soon as you finish, one of your colleagues begins pointing out several flaws. They suggest changes that you hadn't considered and criticize some of the assumptions you made in your analysis. In the past, you might have felt defensive or upset, wondering why your hard work wasn't being appreciated. But today, you remember your microscript. You take a deep breath and say, "Thanks for sharing that with me. Let me reflect on it and come back to you with my thoughts." This simple line does a few things. It shows that you're not only open to feedback, but you're also taking it seriously. Instead of jumping into a defensive mode or withdrawing, you allow yourself the time to think about what was said. Later, when you reflect on the feedback, you see that it was actually helpful. You can make adjustments to the proposal that will make it stronger, and you gain valuable insights for your future work. Instead of leaving the meeting feeling rejected, you leave feeling empowered. You've used the feedback to improve, and you've demonstrated emotional maturity by responding calmly instead of emotionally. This is the power of emotional control. You've taken the feedback, processed it, and turned it into an opportunity for growth, without letting it derail you. One small but powerful action you can take today is to practice setting a pause period when you receive feedback. The next time you're given criticism, whether it's at work, with a friend, or in a relationship, give yourself a set amount of time, whether it's a few minutes, an hour, or even a day, to reflect before responding. This pause allows you to step out of your immediate emotional reaction and think about the feedback objectively. For example, after receiving feedback in a meeting, you could say, "I need some time to think about this. I'll get back to you tomorrow." During this time, take a walk, grab a coffee, or simply sit quietly and process what you've heard. This small action gives you control over your emotional response and prevents you from reacting impulsively. It also allows you to come back to the conversation with a clearer, more thoughtful response. Let's take a moment to practice emotional control together. Close your eyes and take a deep breath in. Hold it for a moment and then slowly exhale. As you breathe, allow any tension in your body to release. Let go of any thoughts or worries that may be clouding your mind. Now, imagine a recent situation where you received feedback. Picture yourself in that moment, feeling the emotions rise. Whether you felt defensive, frustrated, or hurt, acknowledge those feelings without judgment. Now, imagine responding with emotional control. Picture yourself using the microscript, "Thanks for sharing that with me. Let me reflect on it and come back to you with my thoughts." Feel how your body relaxes as you take that pause. Notice the difference between reacting impulsively and responding with calm. As you practice this, you begin to build the emotional resilience needed to handle feedback with grace and composure. Take another deep breath and repeat the following silently to yourself: "I am in control of how I respond to feedback." Let that affirmation sink into your mind and body, knowing that you have the ability to stay grounded, no matter what criticism comes your way. In the next section, we'll explore how to apply these emotional control strategies in even more challenging situations. You'll learn how to stay grounded in the face of tough feedback and high-stakes conversations, so you can navigate them with confidence and poise. Section 8. When it comes to receiving criticism, there's often a battle between your immediate emotional reactions and your desire to respond in a more thoughtful, productive way. You may feel the urge to fight back, defend yourself, or even shut down entirely. These instinctive reactions are deeply ingrained in our survival mechanisms. They're there to protect us from perceived harm. But in the context of feedback, they often cause more harm than good. The stakes are high. If you let these emotional reactions dictate your responses to criticism, you risk staying stuck in negative patterns of behavior. You might avoid important feedback, miss out on opportunities for self-improvement, and even damage your relationships. In the workplace, defensiveness can lead to missed promotions or strained teamwork. In personal relationships, it can lead to misunderstandings, resentment, and communication breakdowns. Emotional reactions to criticism cost you growth and peace of mind. The more you allow them to dictate your behavior, the further you move away from emotional control. But imagine being able to face criticism calmly and with confidence. Instead of reacting out of defensiveness or fear, you could respond with clarity and poise, using the feedback to fuel your personal growth. This is possible with emotional control. Emotional control works because it shifts the focus from defending your ego to embracing personal growth. Our tendency to react emotionally is tied to our need for validation and protection of our self-worth. When someone criticizes us, it feels like an attack on our value, triggering a defensive response. But when we step back and detach our identity from the feedback, we begin to see criticism not as a personal insult, but as an opportunity for improvement. The practice of emotional control doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or pretending you're unaffected by criticism. It's about creating a space between the stimulus, the feedback, and your response. This space allows you to choose how to respond, rather than being driven by an automatic emotional reaction. When you use this space, you're able to respond thoughtfully, rather than impulsively, which leads to better outcomes for you and those around you. This works because it taps into the Stoic principle of accepting what we cannot control while focusing on what we can. You can't control the feedback you receive, but you can control how you respond to it. By exercising this control, you not only protect your emotional well-being, but you also empower yourself to use feedback as a tool for improvement. The ability to respond thoughtfully, even when emotions are high, is what sets emotionally resilient individuals apart. Having a go-to line for handling criticism is invaluable. When you use this line, you create a moment of pause and clarity, which allows you to process feedback without feeling overwhelmed. Here's a simple but effective microscript. Thank you for sharing that. I'll take some time to think it over and get back to you. This line is effective for several reasons. First, it acknowledges the feedback without rejecting it or getting defensive. Second, it provides you with the time you need to process the information and avoid an impulsive reaction. Finally, it sets the tone for a productive follow-up, signaling that you're open to growth and willing to engage with the feedback thoughtfully. By using this script, you not only gain control over your emotional responses but also show that you're committed to improving. It's a simple yet powerful way to navigate difficult conversations with grace and emotional maturity. Let's see how this microscript works in a real-world scenario. Imagine you're in a team meeting at work, and you've just finished presenting a proposal you've been working on for weeks. You feel confident about your work, but then one of your colleagues offers several pieces of critical feedback. They point out areas where the proposal could be stronger, and they suggest changes that you hadn't considered. In the past, you might have felt defensive or even insulted. You might have rushed to explain why you did things the way you did, or you might have retreated into yourself, feeling embarrassed and discouraged. But today, with emotional control as your tool, you take a deep breath and use your microscript. Thank you for sharing that. I'll take some time to think it over and get back to you. In that moment, you've created space for yourself. You've detached from the feedback, allowing yourself time to process it without reacting emotionally. Later, you reflect on the feedback and realize that the suggestions made your proposal even stronger. You incorporate the changes and come back to your colleague with a revised version of the proposal. Instead of feeling hurt or defensive, you feel empowered by the feedback and the opportunity to improve. By responding this way, you've turned what could have been a painful or frustrating experience into a constructive learning moment. You've demonstrated emotional control, a willingness to learn, and a commitment to improving your work, all of which will benefit you in the long run. One small action you can implement today is to set a cooling-off period after receiving feedback. This means that when you get feedback, whether it's positive or negative, you take a set amount of time to reflect on it before responding. Whether you give yourself 5 minutes or an hour, this pause allows you to process the feedback more clearly, without the pressure to respond immediately. For example, after a meeting where you receive feedback, instead of reacting right away, say, "Let me take some time to think this through and get back to you." During this time, you can reflect on the feedback and figure out how to incorporate it into your work. This simple action prevents impulsive reactions and allows you to respond with clarity. By practicing this pause regularly, you create a habit of responding to feedback thoughtfully, not emotionally. This tiny action can make a huge difference in how you handle criticism in the future. Let's take a moment to practice emotional control together. Close your eyes and take a deep breath. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and exhale slowly for 4 seconds. As you breathe, release any tension in your body. Now, bring to mind a time when you received feedback that triggered an emotional response. Maybe it was criticism at work, in a relationship, or about something personal. Recall that moment and notice how your body feels. Are you tense? Is there any tightness in your chest or stomach? Now, imagine yourself in that same situation, but this time, instead of reacting immediately, you take a deep breath and use your microscript. Thank you for sharing that. I'll take some time to think it over and get back to you. Visualize yourself calmly reflecting on the feedback, creating space between the stimulus and your response. Notice the difference in your emotional state when you have control over how you respond. Take another deep breath and repeat the following. I am in control of my emotional reactions. I choose to respond thoughtfully, not impulsively. Let that affirmation sink in, and know that every time you practice this, you are strengthening your emotional control and resilience. In the next section, we'll discuss how to apply these tools in more challenging situations where the feedback is harder to process. You'll learn how to stay emotionally grounded in high-pressure scenarios and how to maintain control even when criticism feels overwhelming. Section 9. It's Friday evening, and you're finally home after a long week. The house is quiet in that heavy way where everything feels like it might tip over if one more thing goes wrong. You drop your bag by the door, loosen your shoes, and tell yourself you're going to have a calm night. No emails. No stress. Just food, maybe a show, and sleep. Then your phone buzzes. It's a message from work. A Slack notification you didn't expect to see this late. You hesitate before opening it, already feeling that familiar tightening in your chest. When you read it, the words land harder than you expect. A teammate has commented on your earlier proposal, pointing out what they see as a major flaw. The tone isn't cruel, but it's direct. Maybe too direct. They've copied your manager. And just like that, the calm you were hoping for disappears. Your first reaction is instant. Heat rises in your body. Your thoughts start racing. You want to respond right now. You want to explain yourself, clarify what they misunderstood, and maybe even push back a little. You feel the old pattern kicking in, the urge to defend, to prove, to protect your competence. Another part of you wants to do the opposite, shut down, ignore it, pretend you didn't see the message until Monday. This is the exact moment where things usually spiral. You notice it happening. That's the first difference. Instead of grabbing your phone and firing off a response, you pause. You remember what you've practiced. You remind yourself that this feeling, this tight, urgent, defensive energy, isn't a signal that something terrible is happening. It's just your nervous system reacting to perceived criticism. So you haven't responded yet. You put the phone face down on the table. You stand there for a second, feeling the discomfort in your body. Your shoulders are tense. Your jaw is tight. You take a slow breath in, then another. Not to make the feeling disappear, but to give yourself a little space inside it. You remember that one simple sentence you practiced earlier. The one designed exactly for moments like this. You say it quietly to yourself first, just to feel it land. Thank you for the feedback. I'll take some time to reflect and get back to you. You haven't sent it yet. You're not there. But saying it reminds you that you don't have to decide anything right now. You give yourself a few minutes. You change clothes. You get a glass of water. You let your body come down a notch. The message is still there. The situation hasn't magically resolved. But you're no longer reacting from that sharp edge. When you pick up your phone again, you reread the message more slowly. This time, you notice details you missed before. The feedback is specific. It's not attacking you as a person. It's about one part of the proposal. You still don't fully agree with it, but it no longer feels like a personal indictment. That's the turning point. The old version of you would have either argued immediately or avoided it all weekend, letting it eat at you. Tonight, you choose something different. You type a response, keeping it short and neutral. You use the script you practiced. Thanks for flagging this. I want to think it through and I'll follow up. You send it. And then you stop. That's important. You don't keep checking Slack. You don't reread the message 10 times. You've set a boundary, even if it's just for the evening. You've created a reply window instead of letting the situation dominate your night. Later, as you're sitting on the couch, you notice something unexpected. You're calmer than you would have been in the past. The situation didn't disappear, but it also didn't hijack your entire emotional state. You're not replaying imaginary arguments in your head. You're not drafting defensive speeches in your mind. Before bed, you take one more quiet moment. You think about the feedback again, but now from a steadier place. You ask yourself one simple question: what part of this, if any, is useful? Not what feels unfair. Not what triggers your ego. Just what could help you improve. You realize there might actually be something there worth adjusting. Not because you're wrong as a person, but because no work is ever perfect. That thought feels grounded instead of heavy. You sleep better than you usually would after something like this. On Monday morning, when you revisit the proposal, you're clear-headed. You make a small revision. You prepare a calm follow-up message explaining your reasoning and acknowledging the feedback. When you send it, there's no edge to it. No defensiveness. Just clarity. And here's the quiet win: regardless of how the other person responds, you stayed centered. You didn't shut down. You didn't explode. You didn't let one message control your entire weekend. You handled criticism without abandoning yourself or attacking someone else. That's what emotional control actually looks like in real life. Not perfection. Not indifference. Just the ability to pause, choose your response, and move forward without dragging unnecessary emotional weight with you. Section 10. Throughout this lesson, we've explored the power of emotional control when it comes to handling criticism. We've learned how to separate our self-worth from the feedback we receive, how to respond thoughtfully instead of defensively, and how to use criticism as a tool for growth rather than a source of stress. The key takeaway is that emotional control doesn't mean suppressing feelings, but it means choosing how to respond to those feelings. By practicing emotional control, you can transform feedback into an opportunity for improvement, without letting it derail you. First, we looked at how criticism often feels like an attack on our value, triggering an automatic emotional response. We learned how our instincts can either push us to defend ourselves or withdraw into self-doubt. Then we explored why emotional control works. By creating space between the feedback and our response, we're able to reflect thoughtfully and decide how to engage with the feedback constructively. Next, we introduced the microscript, a simple phrase you can use to pause and regain control when facing criticism. Thank you for the feedback. I'll take some time to reflect and get back to you. This line empowers you to detach from emotional reactivity and gives you the space you need to process the information. After that, we practiced using the pause and reflect technique, allowing us to create distance from our immediate emotional response and gain clarity before engaging in a more thoughtful response. Finally, we worked through a real-world vignette to show how these tools can be applied when criticism is particularly challenging. By using the tools we've discussed, you can handle tough feedback with calm, confidence, and clarity. Do today's steps. Set a pause and reflect period for yourself the next time you receive criticism. Give yourself time, whether it's 5 minutes, 30 minutes, or a day, to process the feedback before responding. This helps you approach it with clarity and thoughtfulness. Practice your microscript in low-stakes situations first. When you receive feedback in less emotional situations, use the line, "Thank you for the feedback. I'll take some time to reflect and get back to you." To build the habit of responding thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively, use the cooling-off period technique. Next time you feel emotional about feedback, take a step back for at least 5 minutes to reflect. This simple action gives you control over your emotional responses and prevents you from reacting immediately. Watch next pointer. If this lesson resonated with you, next you'll want to watch the lesson on mastering your response to difficult conversations, where we dive deeper into navigating high-stakes situations and how to stay centered in conversations that trigger strong emotions. We'll cover how to handle challenging feedback in real time and use these emotional control tools in more intense scenarios. If you want a whole library of Stoic Focus lessons on emotional control, boundaries, and relationships, this is what we do here every week. If you feel messages like this need to reach more people, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.